Hey church, Rick here with the word for Wednesday. Hope this check-in on Wednesday finds you well, and I hope you're encouraged with the words that we try to lift you up with. One of the things I want to encourage you to is that, there's more to church than just what happens on Sunday morning. We have midweek gatherings of small groups. In fact, there's a great couple studies that I just encourage you to go on. Then Monday night, we have one on Tuesday night, we got one on Thursday night. There's some just great stuff that's happening. So check our website and the links down below if you want to connect with that, and some activities coming up. But more importantly, I think what has been interesting during this kind of a corona crisis is that we've had to look at things differently. Wouldn't you agree? We've had to kind of engage differently in how we do church and what we think church is. Sunday morning with more online presence and more folks watching and folks attending. There's some things that are convenient. It's great to sit and watch church in your pajamas, but you just don't get the presence and feel of what it's like to be there. And that's not a pressure statement at all. That's just kind of a stating of fact, and some folks, it's just not a comfortable experience. And you wouldn't feel the presence of God if you came because you're just not comfortable there. So we bless all of it, and we want to do better at both so that there's a sense of growth and we're enhancing your experience with God and walking with you in your discipleship and growth process. But one of the things that I noticed that's interesting is in our restructuring of how we do things, there's some things that are being redefined for us. And I think we need to be careful because I don't want to be resistant to something that God is really doing that is good and beneficial and healthy. Part of that, I would say, is like my concept of worship. We kind of have expectations when it comes to worship. It's got to be Sunday morning. It's got to have a big screen. The band's got to play for 22.5 minutes and can't go any longer. And, they can't be talking in between. There's got to be good sound, and the words have got to be on time. Or maybe that's not your expectation. Maybe your expectation is just a gathering where you can express your heart and sincerely engage with God in an expression of what value and worth He is to us as a race, as a people. So that's all well and good, but maybe there's some other options that we just haven't considered. See, one of the things that's interesting is seasons like this put the church in a position that I think it functions best in. And what I mean by that is I think the church functions best when it's under stress or under duress or under persecution. Worship is kind of a similar thing. I think worship is something that comes alive with the desperation of our heart and the desperation of our situation. I'm going to kind of share with you really quick a little bit of a passage in Acts that I feel kind of defines what I'm getting at. And also what I'm getting at is also I think that we could all feel less than, or it's things aren't quite to what they should be because we're either watching it online or because everybody we love is in the room. And frankly, I think we need to put all that aside and really see what the power of worship is apart from what we define worship as. Hold that thought as I read this. I'm in Acts chapter 16 and verse 22. And the crowd rose up together against them, and the chief magistrates tore their robes off and proceeded to order them, this is Paul and Silas, beaten with rods. And when they had inflicted many blows upon them, they threw them into prison, commanding the jailer and guard to secure them. And he, having received such a command, threw them into the inner prison and fastened their feet in the stocks. About midnight, Paul and Silas were praying, singing hymns of praise to God, and the prisoners were listening to them. And suddenly there came a great earthquake, so the foundations of the prison house were shaken, and immediately all the doors were opened, and everyone's chains were unfastened. And when the jailer had been roused out of his sleep and saw the prison doors thrown open, he drew his sword and was about to kill himself, supposing that the prisoners had escaped. But Paul cried out with a loud voice, saying, "Do yourself no harm. We're all here." And he called for lights and rushed in, and trembling with fear, fell down before Paul and Silas. And after he brought them out, he said, "Sirs, what must I do to be saved?" There might be an opportunity for us to realize that worship takes on different dimensions because our heart and our souls and our spirits are in different places when we're under duress or stress, or when we're walking through a spiritual desert, or when we're going through a place of struggle. I think the greatest opposition to true heartfelt worship is complacency, comfort, and familiarity. They were in prison. There's no great band. We've got gifted musicians in our church, and it's easy to worship. But in prison, there was no great band. There was no words on the wall for them to read. They're just bearing their hearts in worship. And in this season here where, there's a lot of bad news coming all the time. And as the cases escalate and the numbers increase, though fortunately, thank God, and we should celebrate the fact that deaths are still decreasing, we need to be thankful and search our heart for the depth of really what are we worshiping God for? Is it for who he is and what he does and how he transforms our lives and how he is the most beautiful and powerful thing in the universe? Or when I worship, am I worshiping to get to a place where it makes me feel good? See, when I worship to feel good, my ceiling, the apex, the highest point of my worship is my feeling and how good I can feel. But when I worship God for who he is, the unlimited, most beautiful thing in the universe, being that exists, the creator of all things, that transcends my feelings. So my ceiling is here when I worship for my feeling, but my ceiling gets unlimited because God is infinite when I worship him for his attributes of who he is, and when I engage him for what he does in continuing to redeem and restore his creation and his people. It's a different animal, isn't it? Boy, it's if you play any sort of high school sports, you know that when you playing JV is great, but varsity's a whole other game. Well, it's not just playing JV ball when you're trying to get to your feelings. You're missing out on what it's like to play in the NFL, which is exponentially above what you did in high school. So much of our experience in worship is so dependent on others and how we feel that we never really feel and engage the heights of what could be because we don't focus our worship on the whole perfect, beautiful, amazing picture of God. I mean, have you ever worshipped and realized that he's the one that created the universe and the breath? Have you ever worshipped because of the sunset that you've seen that just took your breath away? And that's what I mean. So my dear friends in California that are pastors are dealing with an issue when it comes to worship. Their state, they can't sing. And friends, I'm telling you, I think the biggest mistake has just been made. Because when people start singing in prison, big things happen. Friends, if you're in California right now and you're listening to this, bless you and know that we're praying for you. But I'm actually going to ask God for a revival to release the power of restoration, the power of his kingdom as people worship under their breath, as people worship underground, as people worship in their homes. Do you realize the mistake the enemy has made? I can't wait to see the fruit of what's going to happen. This week, I am devoting my time to praying for our brothers and sisters in these states that are getting their restrictions put on them, because I know revival will come. And I am praying that in us, we don't need those restrictions to get us to worship at that level, that we will worship at God for who he is, for what he does, and the power of who he is making us in engaging a restorative redemptive, and empowering relationship. I'm praying for you. Please be praying for me. Hopefully I'll get to see you. And as soon as this all blows over, man, I can't wait to see what the church is going to look like. God is going to do big things. Bless you all. Have a great night.